morning, everyone. It is 10 a.m. and this is February 5th, Friday. This is the Committee on Corrections, Military, and Veterans. We're here to hear a number of bills, but before we start, we have a couple of housekeeping announcements. Vice Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair. Because morning hearings must adjourn prior to the noon floor session, not all testifiers may have the opportunity to testify. In that event, please know that your written testimony will be considered by the committee. Please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify and after your testimony is complete. The Zoom chat function will allow you to chat with the technical staff only. Please use the chat only for technical issues. If you are disconnected unexpectedly, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If disconnected while presenting testimony, you may be allowed to continue if time permits. Please note, the House is not responsible for any bad internet connections on the testifier's end. In the event of a catastrophic network failure, it may be necessary to reschedule the hearing or schedule a meeting for decision-making. In that case, an appropriate notice will be posted. Please refrain from profanity or uncivil behavior. Such behavior may be grounds for removal from the hearing without the ability to rejoin.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And with that, members, we'll get started. First up, we have House Bill 835 relating to the National Guard Youth Challenge Academy. First up, we have the Department of Defense offering testimony. Bruce Oliveira.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Ono, Vice Chair Ganadin, and members of the Committee on Corrections and Military Veterans. I'm Brigadier General Retired Bruce Oliveira, Community Programs Director, State of Hawaii Department of Defense. I'm also the Director for the State of Hawaii Youth Challenge Academy. I thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony for House Bill 835, and I stand on my written testimony and prepared to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. We have your written testimony. Next up, we have the Judiciary. They offered testimony in support, as well as Oahu Motorsports Association, also in support. We have testimony from someone joining us, Ruben Betts. Ruben, is not present. We also have testimony from, I'd say, about 15 other individuals, all in support. Members, any questions on House Bill 835? Moving on, House Bill 1292, relating to the Hawaii National Guard retirement benefits. First up, we have the Department of Defense. Major General, are you on the line? House Bill 1292.
Good morning, Chair. I am Colonel Mori. I'm briefing for Major General Hara. Okay, good morning, Chair Ono, Vice Chair Ganadin, and members of the Committee on Corrections, Military, and Veterans. I am Colonel Tracy Omori, Hawaii National Guard, Chief of the Joint Staff. The Department of Defense stands on its written testimony as submitted, and I will stand by for any questions.
Thank you. We have the Hawaii National Guard Enlisted Association, Mr. Maui Quizon, with testimony, and he's not present, okay. The ERS, Mr. Thomas Williams, providing testimony from ERS.
Camera's not on yet. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Chair Ono, Vice Chair Ganadin. This is Tom Williams, the Director of the Employees Retirement System. I want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity this morning to testify, unfortunately in opposition to House Bill 1292. Let me begin by acknowledging the enormous sacrifice and contribution that our military and our National Guard make, not only for the nation, but for our state in particular. And we think it certainly warrants recognition and acknowledgement. But we don't believe that awarding benefits through the ERS is the appropriate vehicle for such recognition or provision of benefits for a number of reasons. We have provided written testimony that we think details the reasons for our opposition. I wish these were not so, but it is the fact that they do exist, and we can't ignore those. Primarily, we are concerned about the ERS's tax exemption. I suspect that many of you know that it's one of the most valuable features of our program. It's accorded by the Internal Revenue Service, and it allows for the accrual of benefits to not be taxed during their buildup, and even in some instances not to be taxed, obviously, by the state when they're paid out. It also allows the employee contributions to be made on a tax-deferred basis. But in order to maintain those benefits, the IRS requires that we limit our program to governmental employees, to a defined group of eligible individuals. And currently, that is limited to full-time employees of the state, the city and county of the city of Honolulu, and the various counties. Any individual in the private sector is actually ineligible for participation in the ERS. And if we were to allow people from the profit-making sector to accrue any benefits in our program, it would disqualify our plan. And those tax privileges, those tax exemptions, so-called tax qualification, would be lost. Additionally, the ERS is a trust. Trust law applies to our assets, all of our monies held in trust for our members. And the IRS and trust law as well requires that our resources be employed solely and exclusively for the benefit of our members. So while we can engage in studies of benefits and restructure the program for eligible members, we can't expend those resources or monies developing services, for example, for those whom we know to be ineligible for participation in our plan. If we were to do so, that would violate what is known as the exclusive benefit rule. And that is that all resources, assets, monies are expended exclusively for the benefit of our members and or their beneficiaries. Secondly, there is an act, Act 29, I believe it is, presently in effect that does not permit any enhancements or expansions of the benefits that are provided by the ERS until the program is fully funded. I think many of you know that as it currently stands, the ERS has about a $14.5 billion unfunded liability. And Act 29 was established so as to avoid increasing that unfunded liability by benefit expansions. I think it's important to note that members of the ERS, those full-time employees who currently participate and who also serve in the National Guard, do receive service credit today for periods during which they are on active duty call-up. So when our members are called up, whether it's for a month or 6 months, a year, or whatever that duration is, they get service credit. So it would only be those people who are ineligible, these private sector individuals who don't accrue service and as a practical and legal matter can't accrue service in our plan. I think it's important also to observe that ours is a defined benefit plan, and it is designed to reward and provide retirement benefits for long-term career employees. It's not intended to provide, and not designed, quite frankly, administratively to provide benefits for short-term employment periods, intermittent work. We think it would be misleading for individuals to contribute to our program. They would contribute, as would the employers, and not accrue benefits at the end of their involvement. I think, as you may very well know, our program now requires 10 years of accrued or accumulated service in order to be vested or to be entitled to any benefit. And if the accrual of service and the ERS was to be derived solely from this National Guard engagement, it would unlikely ever total 10 years, and therefore no benefits would be payable. It would also likely create significant administrative problems for the ERS, as we have to enroll these individuals and service these individuals and receive payments, contributions, employers, employees. And of course, I think the payment of contributions themselves is a bit of a challenge during the current sort of fiscal environment for both employers and employees. In our testimony, we recommend an alternative approach to recognizing the contributions that these Guard members make, and that is through the PTS, part-time temporary seasonal employee deferred compensation plan that already exists. We think it is designed for this type of employee or person with the intermittent service. It's managed by the DHERD, and in fact, there is an alternative bill, I believe it's House Bill 790, that in fact attempts to accommodate these National Guard employees through the PTS program. And we think that that would be the more appropriate vehicle. So for those reasons and those outlined in our testimony, we must respectfully oppose the plan, but we appreciate the intent of the program. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity, and I'm available to respond to your questions.
Thank you, Director. We appreciate your emphasis on trying to find a solution to this problem, and we have your testimony, written testimony. We have two other individuals with testimony in support, and that's all we have. Members, any questions? House Bill 1292. House Bill 1352, thank you, relating to inmates. We have, 1352 relating to surplus military land. We have testimony from the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii in support, comments from the Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii, and 3 individuals with support. It looks like we don't have anyone here to testify in front of us, so I will forego questions on 1352. But members, I will let you know, the introducer of 1352 provided me an HD1 with some suggested amendments for this bill, which will pass out during our break for DM. House Bill 398, we have relating to inmates. We have testimony from PSD, Director Otani.
Good morning, Chair Ono, Vice Chair Fernndez, and members of the committee. I believe you have our written testimony, and we'll stand by the written testimony this morning.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we have it in written form. There's testimony from Habilitat in support, Community Alliance on Prisons offering comments, and 3 individuals submitting testimony in support. That's all the testimony I have for House Bill 398. Members, any questions? Vice Chair.
Good morning, Director Otani.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to see you here. In reviewing this bill, what is your understanding of compacts between states for the jurisdiction of inmates? I'm hoping that you could just explain the department's interaction with other states in transferring people regarding jurisdiction.
All right, so I think it's a state-to-state agreement, and it's basically a one-to-one. So basically, if we petition a state to take one of our inmates, then we receive one of their inmates.
So it's like, so we give one, we take one. Is that ordinarily how it would work?
Yeah, that's basically how it works.
Okay. How are things changing now that states are ending their relationships with private prisons? So so now that some private prisons in Texas are closing, as well as Minnesota and New York, California is ending its relationships, as is the federal government. How will the compact be affected?
I think that's two separate issues. The compact is basically a state to state. The private prisons are basically a contract that we have with these facilities to house our inmates.
Okay. Is it now pursuant to the compact legal to retain jurisdiction over inmates for incidences that happen in private facilities, although those facilities are on another state's land?
Well, it's my understanding that the inmate is required to follow policies based off of Hawaii as well as the facility that we're contracted with. If the inmate occurs any type of law violation, the state jurisdiction there, would be responsible for following through with prosecution.
So that means the state of Hawaii would be responsible for prosecution for incidences that happen in private facilities, or another state?
I'm sorry, let me clarify. For example, Arizona, if we have an inmate in our Arizona contracted facility and the inmate, picks up a law violation there, state of Arizona would be responsible for prosecuting the inmate at that point.
Is that compliant with the rules of the Supreme Court and the compact? I mean, because I'm not sure if that aligns with my understanding of the law regarding jurisdiction of inmates, that the department retains jurisdiction over them. So because now we're dealing with a conflict of laws, and some states have far more stringent penalties for certain instances. For example, the state of Hawaii does not have the death penalties, whereas Arizona does. Could you speak to that?
It's my belief they're still responsible. The state that the crime in which the state occurred is still responsible.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair. Director, thank you for joining us. I have a quick question. I understand that in your testimony, you write that many of these powers are already given to you. Can I just confirm that?
Well, we can bring back an inmate at any time. So, for example, we're using Arizona. We have the discretion of returning an inmate at any point of the inmate's sentence.
Okay. And in your testimony, you mentioned that there is an issue with releasing jurisdiction. I believe that you mentioned with the Hawaii Paroling Board. Did I get that right?
I can take that. Hello, Representative. This is Tommy Johnson, the Deputy Director of Corrections. The Hawaii Paroling Authority does maintain jurisdiction of inmates if they parole them to another sentence. An example is an inmate in Arizona commits a crime in Arizona, and Arizona makes the sentence concurrent with his current Hawaii sentence. The parole board can then parole the person to their Arizona sentence, and the person will be transferred to the jurisdiction of Arizona. And providing the person's Hawaii sentence is longer, when the Arizona sentence is done, they'll be transferred back to Hawaii to complete their sentence. I hope that addresses your question.
Okay, thank you. Members, any further questions? Vice Chair.
Following up on the chair's line of questioning. So you're saying if an inmate commits a crime in Arizona, he's sentenced by an Arizona court, and then his term of incarceration is extended, so he would serve that extended term in Arizona.
Well, his Hawaii term will not be extended, but if, let's say, he's convicted in Arizona and Arizona's sentence is consecutive to Hawaii's sentence, then it's likely that Hawaii will release this inmate to Arizona either on parole or when he completes his Hawaii sentence.
And then he would, assuming it's a he, would continue to stay incarcerated in Arizona.
Correct.
In the private prison.
No, in whatever prison that the state of Arizona deems appropriate.
So I understand. Thank you.
Okay, members, further questions? Okay, House Bill 621 relating to the Oahu Community Correctional Center site. First up, we have Office of Planning, Ruby Edwards, offering some testimony. Good morning, Ruby.
Good morning, Chair Ono, Vice Chair Ganadin, and members of the House Committee. Just wanted to say that we stand on our written testimony, offering comments in support of the intent.
Thank you. We have testimony from DHHL in supports the City and County of Honolulu. Oh, it looks like one of their newest council members, Councilmember Cordero, in support. The Community Alliance on Prisons in opposition, Kokua Kalihi Valley in support. And it looks like we have about a dozen individuals giving testimony in support, with one individual among them offering some comments. House Bill 621. Members, any questions? It looks like we only have the Office of Planning on the line.
Sure.
Okay. Representative Tarnas.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Edwards, I wanted to ask, I read your testimony, and if you think that this might be, the timing of this effort might be premature, what would you suggest as being a first step to go about this process of engaging the community, especially since it is identified as a TOD site? And you know, what do you think is the best step in order to help us achieve the introducers' desired outcomes?
Well, this is a very difficult question to respond to. I don't know that we have an official position on it. It seems like one of the problems we have is that it's still, the whole relocation effort is still in its infancy, and we believe that possibly this type of effort should definitely needs to lay the groundwork for master planning for the site, but maybe it's another year out. Informal meetings and kind of sounding efforts could be possible in the interim. I think just standing up something of this scale right now it will be difficult. It will be difficult for the Office of Planning to support as we would want to support, and but we are certainly willing to continue to engage in a more informal manner with the constituents that are asking for this. I have been sitting in on a group that Kokua Kalihi Valley has convened to start talking about this. This group has struggled to get traction, but they're also trying to organize their community, just as we are trying to figure out how do we better engage and support that effort. But I think a more informal approach at this point in time may be warranted.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Edwards. Thank you, Chair.
Members, any further questions? Okay, the chair has a question for the Office of Planning. Thank you for joining us in this unique setting, and
Yes.
Thanks for your patience. If there were a moratorium on the construction of new facilities, would there be a need for a working group to talk about what to do in this area?
I can't answer that, certainly for the Office of the State, but certainly it would delay the need for such a working group. Although I think, the community really does want to start talking about what TOD will mean for that community, and we understand their needs and the sentiment for trying to find a way in which to pull all the different players together. So it's just a matter of how that gets supported and how that moves forward. But certainly a moratorium we could work a lot on this particular site and nothing come from it.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for answering all our varied questions, even though you may not be the exact person to do it. We have a question from Representative Kobayashi.
Ms. Edwards, did you say that there is some sort of group already from the community working on this question?
It's a group that's been informally pulled together by Michael Epp at the Kokua Kalihi Valley. They have been trying to find a way in which to create a build community-based capacity to engage better in decision-making about land use and TOD decision-making that impacts their community. So it's at times they have a county person sitting in, they have HPHA has sometimes shown up, DOH has sometimes shown up, DHS has sometimes shown up, but it's all very informal. And yeah, so I think they're trying to get legs on this group to really be able to move this forward.
But this group is not focused on OCCC.
I think because it is one of those sites within their community that's going to be impacted by TOD and has already been identified as a strategic TOD site for redevelopment, should OCCC be relocated. I think that is one of the reasons why it has this focus at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, further questions? Thank you, members. The next bill we have on our agenda is House Bill 1080 relating to the phase out of private correctional facilities. First up, we have the Office of the Public Defender. Lee Hayakawa.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, Chair Ono, Vice Chair Ganadin, members of the committee. My name is Lee Hayakawa. I am the Chief Deputy at the Office of the Public Defender. The Office of the Public Defender respectfully supports HB 1080, and we will be submitting or standing on our written testimony.
Understood. Thank you. We have testimony from PSD offering comments. Habilitat with support. Hawaii Friends of Justice and Civic Education and support. League of Women Voters of Hawaii in support. We have the Community Alliance on Prisons. Ms. Kat Brady in support. Kat is not here. Kokua Kalihi Valley with support. ACLU of Hawaii offering testimony in support. Ms. Mandy Fernandez, good morning.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Mandy Fernandez on behalf of the ACLU of Hawaii. We strongly support this measure. We'll stand on our written testimony, but we're available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, we have a number of other testifiers. Ohana Ho'opakele in support. HGEA in support. And we have, it looks like, wow, a whole page of mine. I'm not sure, 30, maybe 30 individuals offering testimony in support of House Bill 1080. Members, questions?
Sure.
Okay, Vice Rep. Tarnas.
Thank you. I'm just trying to understand the way this could work as a planner. You know, you have to do a lot of groundwork before you can move forward on something as significant as this. And I understand that there's a lot of moving parts. In reading the testimony from Mr. Otani, you know, it's not feasible or practical to do some of this. And I'm just wondering what would be really the first step in order to try to figure out a path forward. I appreciate the testimony of those in support of this, but it seems like there's a bigger systemic judicial reform that's really needed before we can actually make this kind of change. And is Mr. Otani on? Is he available? He is?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Otani, if you could speak to your skepticism about this and sort of what you would recommend as sort of the first steps that we need to take in order to begin to address what this bill is seeking to achieve.
Okay. At the present time, we have 1,694 what we consider prisoners. So these are sentenced felons and parole violators that are currently in custody in our facilities here in Hawaii. The total prison population, and these are prisoners again, not the jail population, is 2,751. So we have approximately 1,100 inmates that would be displaced if we did not have the facilities that we have on the mainland. So I think it is part of a bigger issue. if we plan to phase this out in 4 years, either we, start building another prison, or there needs to be some serious reforms as far as who comes to prison and who we release from prison, because we're going to displace 1,100 inmates at this time.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's what I'm getting at, is that what is the first step is really significant judicial reform. Who goes to prison and who stays in prison? And I think we need to deal with that very difficult issue first before we actually start to phase out the use of facilities, even though I do support phasing out the use of private facilities. So I appreciate your comments, Mr. Otani. But I realize we have a lot of work to do ahead of us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rep. Turner. So this is kind of a chicken or the egg situation, huh? Questions? Okay, Rep. Bronco.
This is for Director Otani. I had a question concerning those who are Native Hawaiian who are imprisoned in the mainland. What type of programs that are in place at these private facilities that help perpetuate Hawaiian culture? Many Native Hawaiians make the majority of the prison population, and this disconnection from our communities has negative effects. And I'm curious about your thoughts on this.
Maybe Deputy Director Tommy Johnson can elaborate a little bit more, but just off the top of my head, I know makahiki is afforded at Arizona for inmates.
In addition, this is Tommy Johnson, the Deputy Director for Corrections. In addition to Hawaiians being allowed to practice their Native Hawaiian religion and culture for cultural events, all inmates that are in the mainland in Arizona, regardless of their religion, are allowed some leeway to practice their religion and cultural beliefs within the security parameters there. So the facilities actually work closely with the Hawaii to ensure that what we can do for them, we do with respect to adherence to cultural norms and beliefs, and allowed to practice their religion. And as the director indicated, they're also allowed to do the makahiki. The inmates we have there, although you didn't ask, the inmates we have there that are Native Americans are allowed to have a sweat lodge. And so it gives you an idea that we're trying to work with the inmates in the facilities to provide as much religious freedom as we can within certain security parameters.
Oh, God. Thank you. I just want to note that Native Hawaiians do make up 24% of the general population, but 39% of the incarcerated population. I come from an economics background. I think we have to plan, like Rep. Tarnas said, but I think this is a great first step to move forward to reduce recidivism, especially amongst our Native Hawaiian population. Mahalo.
Thank you. Members, I'm sorry, you'll have to just excuse me. And I have a big apology to one member who's here to testify, and I lost you in the sea of testimony. So I deeply apologize. Robert Merce, you have the advantage of hearing some of our comments and questions. If you're here to testify, why don't you say hi? And again, I'm sorry, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to comment. But I did submit written testimony on this bill, but I will rest on my written testimony, but I'm very interested in speaking on the next bill. Thank you.
Okay, understood. Thank you. We will make sure we don't forget you there again. That's my fault.
Thank you.
Any more questions? This is House Bill 1080. Okay, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Director Otani, what is the review process for the state's relationship with private prisons? Could you explain to the committee?
What is the excuse me, Vice Chair, what is the review process for?
I'm hoping that you could explain how often the department reviews and the process by which it goes through basic things like whom should be sent to the private facility, the cost per day, when you assess that cost per day, and how you choose to bring people back, and just discuss your understanding of the contract with the private prison. This is, I think, something of an educational matter for the members and for the public, as the federal government just decided to end its contracts with private prisons, as did many other states.
Sure. And again, my deputy may jump in if I miss anything, but I think at this point, we have 3 to 4 transports to the mainland per year, going to the mainland as well as returning inmates back. What happens is, inmates that are eligible for transfer to the mainland are screened. We look at medical condition, we look at whether they have pending charges, and those inmates, that do qualify are transferred to the mainland. Inmates that come back for various reasons, for parole release, additional programming, inmates that are completing their full term are brought back. We also bring back inmates for medical reasons also. As far as the oversight of the prison, we have audits that we send a team of staff from Hawaii. To audit the prison.
Can you delete her? Continue, Director. Apologies.
He's muted.
There was another testifier that was unmuted.
Yeah, so again, we do have an audit process. Currently, I believe the cost per day per inmate is approximately $78 per day.
Say that number again.
$78 per day.
$78 per day. Thank you.
Members, House Bill 1080, any further questions? Thank you. House Bill 1082. Oops. Relating to correctional facilities. First up, we have the Office of the Public Defender. Ms. Jacqueline Esser.
Good morning, Chair Ono, Vice Chair Ganadin, members of the committee. My name is Jackie Esser. I'm here on behalf of the Office of the Public Defender. We have submitted written testimony and support. I will rest on that, and I'm available for any questions if necessary. Mahalo.
Thank you. Director Otani and PSD, we have your testimony. House Bill 1082.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee again. We also stand on our written testimony in opposition to this measure and would be available for any comments or questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. We have the Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission. Mark Patterson. Good morning.
Hello and good morning, Representative Ono, Representative Gannigan. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Mark Patterson. I'm the chair of the Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission. We have submitted some testimony, and at this time, I would like to stand on that submission, and I will be standing by for any questions that you folks may have for us. Thank you.
Thank you. The Hawaii Friends of Justice and Civic Education in supports Community Alliance on Prisons, Ms. Kat Brady, with testimony. Good morning. House Bill 1082, Ms. Kat Brady with testimony.
Aloha, I'm sorry.
Okay, we got you loud and clear.
I'm still getting used to this whole thing. Anyway, thank you so much, Chair Ono and Vice Chair Ganadin and members of the committee. I'm Kat Brady, Coordinator of Community Alliance on Prisons, in strong support of this measure. You know, the big disconnect is that the government thinks that prisons are buildings, and the community believes that prisons are people. So right there, we have a major disconnect, and all the effort has been put into making consultants wealthy with millions of dollars of taxpayer money to build buildings without ever having a discussion about who should be in there, why people are in there, and what are better alternatives. So we support this measure, and we really, really want the committee to understand that every person in prison is somebody's son or daughter, mom or dad, and there are people, there are family. And if we don't start looking at what is driving people to incarceration, we're never going to get out of this. It's lack of housing, lack of jobs, lack of education. Let's look at the social and public health problems that are driving people to incarceration. This bill actually is a start to say, let's have a moratorium, let's have a community discussion, and then let's figure out what to do. Thank you so much for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you. We have Kokua Kalihi Valley in support. Ohana Ho'opakele also in support. ACLU of Hawaii, we have your testimony. Good morning, Ms. Mandy Fernandez.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair. Mandy Fernandez on behalf of the ACLU of Hawaii. We strongly support this measure. The Oversight Commission, which has the expertise and purview to make these types of recommendations, has recommended that we halt the construction of a new jail to replace OCCC. I think we should heed their recommendation as well as the recommendations of the HCR 85 task force. I will say that the reforms that we need to implement prior to even considering the construction of a new jail, they're big. We need some big reforms, but they are no bigger than moving ahead with a $525 million new jail in the midst of an economic crisis. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a number of, we have testimony from Habilitat, also in support. We have testimony from some individuals. Let's start off with Robert Merce. Good morning. I catch ya.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you this morning. My name is Bob Merce. I was the Vice Chair of the House Concurrent Resolution 85 Task Force and wrote the interim report and the final report of that task force to the 2017 and 2018 legislatures. The HCR 85 task force recommended in 2017, basically, that the department put a moratorium and engage the community and think through what they're really doing, because we saw after studying the new jail plans for a year that the department was on the wrong track. They were building a jail that was too big, too expensive, and had the wrong focus, and were not putting in place the reform measures that need to take place, like bail reform, that could significantly reduce the jail, the size of the jail that we need, and reduce the cost. But our recommendations were ignored. And most recently, then, of course, the Oversight Commission, which has 4 people on it, and collectively, I would estimate probably 100 years of experience in corrections and criminal justice issues, has made the same recommendation. Just briefly to show you what the problem is that the number of detention beds that they want to put in this new jail, and then unless somebody puts a moratorium, they'll go ahead with the planning for this, is over 1,000 detention beds. Well, if the jail was to open today, we have 860 prisoners at OCCC who would go in there, and that would leave 184 beds empty. So already, even though the Department of Public Safety is projecting that the number of male inmates is going to decline between now and the time this jail is really finished, they already are way overbuilding and have way too many beds. Does that matter? Well, each bed costs $380,000 if you look at the current plans. So having those 184 beds that we don't need at this point would cost roughly $70 million. That would be wasted. But if we also look at this, we need to think it through a little in terms of the pretrial detainees make up 54% of the total OCCC population today, and 21% are probation violators. Most of those people, a significant number, could be released of the pretrial detainees could be released if we had some reasonable bail reform, because 80% of them are charged with a Class C felony or below. And all of the probation violators could probably be housed somewhere else. We wouldn't have to build this, put them in a jail cell, because they're already in the community, and they haven't committed a new crime. They're just in the jail because they've broken one of the rules of the program. So basically what I'm saying is, if you start looking at this carefully, we probably need a jail that has about 400 detention beds or 450 detention beds. And that would reduce the cost by hundreds of millions of dollars, literally hundreds of millions of dollars. So all we're saying at this point, and the reason for we are having all these problems with this planning process is that the department simply isn't listening to the community. So I would say that the two things that should be done are, number one, pass this bill. I think it's a good bill. I would say that not only should they not have any construction going on, what they need to do is follow the recommendation of the Oversight Commission, which is to get the community involved by creating an advisory committee to start working with the department on the plans for the new jail, so that when we have the final plans, they really represent not only what the department thinks, but what the community thinks and believes, and has the collective wisdom of the community embedded in those plans. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for your testimony. We also have testimony from Carrie Ann Shirota. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Carrie Ann Shirota. I'm testifying in my personal capacity. I've worked as a civil rights attorney in Hawaii for a number of years, enforcing our state's fair housing employment laws. But again, I'm speaking in my personal capacity today. I've also worked as a criminal justice advocate. I previously was the director of Maui Economic Opportunities Reintegration Program. And so I have a very different vantage point to see how alternatives that we invest in are more cost effective and helps to build a safer and healthier community than investing in jails and prisons. I strongly support this bill for a number of reasons, and I want to highlight some of them. You know, if we take a look at specific data, we'll see that crime rates in Hawaii have been going down, and our population has rose over a period of decades. It's started to come down, and with COVID, the population has further decreased. As Bob pointed out, the premise of moving forward with this proposed jail is that we need to expand, and for this number of 1,000+ beds. But if you look at the EIS and the studies that were done, it's based upon a projected analysis that is flawed and outdated. And how do I say that it's flawed and outdated? Because if we truly want to build a safer and healthier community, we will look to other jurisdictions that have implemented evidence-based reforms to decrease their population, save costs, avert prison construction, even stop out-of-state prison contracts, bring people home, and divert that funding into programs, services, infrastructure that we know builds a safer and healthier community. As Mandy from ACLU pointed out, when you're thinking about building a jail or prison, we have this number here of 500 million. That is the cost of building. That does not include operational costs that far exceed the cost of construction. We're locking up people, and what are the outcomes? You know, Representative Ono, you're a teacher, your background. If we were to have students in our public school system, about 40 to 60% failing every single year, our community would be in an outrage. We would ask, what's happening? Are they having quality teachers? Do they have the resources they need? And yet when people recycle in and out of our jail and prison system, we blame just the individuals. Yes, individuals have agency, but we're not taking a look at what are we doing as a community to help people succeed or to recycle back into the system. Jail and prison is a place of despair, the way it is currently designed. There's very limited resources for education, for substance abuse treatment, mental health treatment, vocational training. And it's a very violent place. It's a place where we put people, we're saying, who are sometimes violent, and we're subjecting them to further violence. We know based upon data that many of the men and women, particularly the women, are victims themselves of physical violence, domestic violence, sexual abuse, and we're putting them in these cages. We need to look at other states, and I want to highlight, because Representative Tarnas had pointed out, how do we do this? Other jurisdictions, and I put it in my testimony, but I want to highlight, that have implemented criminal justice reforms. New Jersey decreased their population by 8,000 individuals. By comparison, in Hawaii, we're fortunate in the sense that our population is much smaller. Through targeted evidence-based practices, they decreased their population by 8,000 individuals. In New York, they decreased their prison incarcerated population by almost 20,000 individuals over a period of 11 years. In California, with targeted interventions, with also the threat of this Supreme Court looming upon them that there was unconstitutional conditions of confinement, they decreased their prison population by 40,000 in a period of 6 years. There are other smaller states that have invested in justice reinvestment policies and reduced the population. So what I'm encouraging all of you is that we need to reimagine public safety. I know all of you are as legislators, want to make the best policies. We need to think about what are we spending our money on, and are we getting the best return? When we build more jails and prisons, we are not getting a return. In fact, the states that have decreased their population has also shown significant decreases in their crime rates. Further than states that incarcerated more people, their crime rates went up. This is based upon research and data. So as policymakers, I beg you to take a look at the evidence. There are other agencies, states, criminal justice experts that we should use our money on instead of paying money for consultants. And take, for example, Maui. I'm originally from Maui. We have spent over 15 million over the last maybe 10 years on, quote, jail consultants, planners. On Oahu, we're spending all this money on planners. Who is benefiting from that? From jail building? It is not our community. That money could be diverted into the LEAD program, which would divert people from the system. It would provide people mental health treatment. We could fund more habilitats and MEO best reintegration program, which when you look at the data has decreases recidivism. So as all of you take a look at what options we have, why would we continue to put more money into a jail and prisons that are not helping to make us safer? So I strongly encourage you to please pass this bill, enact a moratorium across the entire state, stop any funding for OCCC, MCCC statewide when there are alternatives that exist that will cost us less money and will help us not only now, but for our future generations. Because the money that we save from all of this prison and jail construction, we can put it into things that work. And I beg you, not only for all of us here, but we have to think about the future generations. I'm thinking about my son. Some of you have grandchildren. We need to think about them. Are we going to invest in education, housing, treatment, support? Or are we going to invest in putting people in cages? And if you don't believe that it is what it is, I strongly encourage you to visit our jails and prisons. I worked previously as a public defender. I have loved ones who are both law enforcement as well as who have been incarcerated. And my family has been impacted by crime. My uncle was murdered when I was 6 years old on Maui. But I can tell you, our community is saying to all of you, please invest in restorative justice and justice reinvestment. And please pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, that's all the testifiers we have for House Bill 1082. Are there any questions? House Bill 1010, we have relating to the Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission. First up, we have the Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission, Mr. Mark Patterson, House Bill 1110.
Thank you once again. I'm trying to see why my video is not working. I'm sorry, I apologize.
Okay. We can hear you. We can hear you loud and clear.
All right, I kind of look better like this anyway. Again, once again, Chair Mark Patterson from the Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission. We did submit testimony on this particular bill, and I stand by my testimony, and I stand by any questions that you may have. But if I'm just going to say a little bit at this particular point in time, it has been an interesting year since our creation. After a decade of hard work by the community to get this commission activated, the law was passed and commissioners chosen, and however, for whatever reasons, the appropriation never got to us. Yeah, and we did our best during this COVID situation to learn how to walk, to learn how to crawl, as it was our year of birth, 2020. And I like to say that a lot of the commissioners we're very proud of what we accomplished, but we also know that we could have accomplished so much more had we had our appropriation and had we had staff. Yeah, it's very difficult to work under the sunshine law for the commissioners to get together and discuss things when we don't have the staff that keeps us together. And as you heard, yes, we do have over a century of experience on all 5 commissioners. And we want to be that interpretation between the community and the state. Yeah. So we can tell the state, these are what the community is after. And because of our experience, this is what we believe how we can do it to benefit everyone. An appropriation is important for the continuation of the community's hopes in the legislature and why they created the commission. And I really ask that you folks really consider and help us to bring about the release of appropriations for the commission's work. Thank you very much. I'll be here for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. The Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs submitted testimony and supports the Community Alliance on Prisons. Ms. Kat Brady, good morning. We have your testimony.
Good morning. Good morning. Aloha, Chair Ono and Vice Chair Ganadin and members of the committee. We're in strong support of this measure. It's kind of ironic that in one piece of legislation, Act 179, 2 entities were created. One was the Correctional Oversight Commission, and the other was the Criminal Justice Research Institute. And what's really interesting is that the Oversight Commission has had no support at all, except from the community. They've had no government support, no money. They had all these plans to bring in the oversight queen, this woman who's a professor at the University of Texas at Austin, who was going to really help them frame how they could move Hawaii forward. And yet they were unable to do that. They've had no staff. Despite that, they've been meeting every month. They've been inviting the public. They're on Zoom. They not only ask the public if they have anything to say, they encourage participation. And what is really telling to me, after the first year with no money, not 1 cent, the Oversight Commission submitted a 136-page report to the legislature, to the 2020 legislature. And the well-funded Criminal Justice Research Institute submitted a 2-page report for their 2020 work. I mean, could there be anything that's more telling than that? These people have been volunteering on the Oversight Commission, and they have all been working. It is pretty amazing, and they seek community input. And I would suggest that the state look at how the Oversight Commission operates and understands how important it is to bring in the community and community values. Thank you so much for this opportunity to testify, and I sure hope you fund this entity. Thank you.
Thank you. ACLU of Hawaii, Ms. Mandy Fernandez, we have your testimony as well. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Mandy Fernandez on behalf of the ACLU of Hawaii. We strongly support this measure. The Oversight Commission is tasked in part with reviewing Public Safety Department's reentry program. The Public Safety Department is statutorily obligated to provide comprehensive reentry support to people exiting out of correctional facilities and back into their communities. We believe they have failed in their obligation to do this, especially around a 2017 law that was passed requiring them to provide civil identification documents. These still are not in full compliance with that law, even though it was passed nearly 4 years ago. Reentry is one of the smartest investments that we can make. Reentry programs focusing on education, employment, and housing have been proven to reduce recidivism and help people successfully transition out of incarceration and back to their families, back to their communities. This makes our communities safer, it offers people a fresh start, and it's really the smartest path forward. We want to ensure that PSD is complying with its obligations to provide this reentry support. We want to look to the future and what more we can do to provide reentry services. And the Oversight Commission is a critical part of that. So we strongly urge the committee to move this measure forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a number of individuals submitting testimony. First up, Ms. Carrie Ann Shirota. Good morning. We have your testimony on House Bill 1110.
Good morning. Thank you again, Chair. And as you know, I'm very passionate about these issues, and I thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of this measure. So I just want to share sort of a backdrop, is that this idea for an oversight commission was really discussed for almost 20 years. And the reason at that time, I remember Kat Brady and I were like two of the only criminal justice advocates coming to testify to talk about what was happening to our people who were transferred to private prisons out of state. And at the time, you may recall when this idea was conceived, it was considered as a temporary solution to prison overcrowding. We're over 20 years deep into sending people out of state, most of whom are Native Hawaiian disproportionately. So we need to address some of that systemic racism within our system. But there were calls for oversight back then. And the reason for it is that there were literally people who were dying, people who were being severely beaten or murdered in out-of-state prisons, people who were not able to connect with their family, their loved ones. And there was the rise of violence and prison gangs. Prior to sending our people out of state, we did not have any bona fide security threat groups, prison gangs. And as a result of us sending our people out of state, that happened because they were trying to protect themselves against other states who have inmates who have their own prison gangs. So we actually enacted policies and laws that created prison gangs in Hawaii. And this is why it's so important for us to think about the intended and unintended consequences of our policy decisions. But getting back to the Oversight Commission, we're so grateful that this is in place, but the Oversight Commission, as you've heard, has an unfunded mandate. They have extremely important work to do. And we believe as community members that if you fully support the commission, they will help to reduce the incarcerated population, look at areas in which we can enhance reentry, which will ultimately save money and literally could be saving people's lives. People who may die because of suicide inside of our jails and prisons, people who are locked up and may have more severe mental health conditions upon leaving our jails and prisons. So the money that we put into this Oversight Commission, it's a matter of transparency, but it's also a matter of accountability. And it really puzzles me is that we will fund all these other commissions and we're not funding the Oversight Commission. And if you look at their budget, it's really a small amount compared to the Department of Public Safety, compared to all of the amount of money we've been spending on prison and jail consultants. And yet the very entity that by our own prior task force group created and recommended, we are not funding it. And I know it's not the legislature did put money to support the Oversight Commission. I believe it was withheld last year, but show the community that you are committed to creating a restorative justice system. Because if we truly want to reduce crime and look at solutions that are cost effective and stops the cycle, vicious cycle back to jail and prison, we will fully fund the Oversight Commission. So thank you so much. Please support this measure.
Thank you. We have, I'd say maybe 30 more individuals who submitted testimony in support, and there's one individual who submitted testimony in opposition. Members, any questions? House Bill 1110. Kobayashi.
For Mr. Patterson, Mark Patterson. I assume that the $330,000 is a high estimate for what you would want for a budget. Is that correct?
I think we were going off of what was originally offered to us in the original Act 179. Yeah, and it's normally an executive director, a clerical staff for her, and a couple of researchers.
Uh-huh. Well, maybe this would be a comment, not a question, but perhaps you should know that oftentimes these bills go through with blank dollars or $1 and ultimately get the money inserted, whatever that money is. And so my comment would be, I would urge you to think about a high, medium, and low amount, and perhaps inform committee chairs, the appropriate committee chairs, of what those high, medium, and low amounts might be. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that, and we are prepared to work with the legislature in terms of what is the reality and what can really benefit us and help the state in its financial crisis as well. So yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Members, further questions? House Bill 1110.
Chair, just a clarification, your
Yes.
one opposition is really not related to this bill, so you have like full support.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, looks like Mr. Epstein might have got his numbers switched. Happens to the best of us. Further questions? Thank you for the clarification, Majority Floor Leader. Okay, and we're on to our final bill of the agenda today, House Bill 1389 relating to the Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission. We have testimony from DHS. We have Director Kathy Betts.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Kathy Betts, Director for the Department of Human Services. We'll stand on our written testimony providing comments today, but I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we have your comments in writing. And the Community Alliance on Prisons, Ms. Kat Brady.
Aloha again. Thank you so much for this opportunity to testify. You know, the commission right now sits in the Attorney General's office, and they have really been no help. And we haven't really had any help from the executive branch. So we believe that moving it to a more appropriate agency like the Ombudsman's office, because they're charged with actually making recommendations for state agencies. We think that is the better place for the Oversight Commission rather than in the executive branch where we've had no support and no help. Thank you.
Thank you. We have testimony from a number of individuals, maybe 20 or so, mostly in support, a couple with comments, but we have testimony from Ms. Carrie Ann Shirota, House Bill 1389.
Okay, thank you again. I am asking that this committee support this measure. I think just to go back kind of historically is that the Department of Public Safety prior to, we actually had our jails and prisons under the Department of Human Services, or it may have been called a different title back then. And if you look back at years ago, there was more of an emphasis on providing education, vocational training, other types of programs and services to help people in their rehabilitation so that they would re-enter the community as contributing members, not only of their family, but our entire community, giving people opportunities to do good, to have second chances. So the mission of Department of Human Services is more in alignment with the Oversight Commission, which is tasked with re-entry and successful reintegration of our brothers and sisters who are in jails and prisons. But I also understand some of I have not read the department's testimony, so I'm not really be able to respond to their comments. I've heard Kat Brady's testimony and I hear her concerns. I could see that also it may be appropriate to put the Oversight Commission under the Ombudsman's office, administratively attached. But from an attorney legal perspective and having observed multiple Oversight Commission meetings, I also do not believe it's appropriate to continue to have it maintained within the Attorney General's office. I believe that there is, if not an actual conflict of interest, that there is a perceived conflict of interest, because the Attorney General's office also represents the Department of Public Safety. And I've witnessed some hearings, some committee meetings, commission meetings, where the Attorney General is essentially advising the Public Safety Department staff, you know, you may not, you can answer that, or you don't have to answer that. It's sort of like they're answering to two masters. So who are they truly representing? Are they representing the Oversight Commission? Or are they representing the Department of Public Safety? Because the purpose, again, of the Oversight Commission is transparency and accountability, and to transform our correctional system into one of rehabilitation and restorative justice. And by representing the Attorney General's office, which sometimes has the responsibility to defend the Department of Public Safety in court when they are being sued. So I believe that there is this, again, actual or perceived conflict of interest. So it'd be better to be removed. I also think that if you have it within Department of Human Services, administratively attached, the philosophy of the department, helping people to succeed and looking at the type of resources that they can collaborate with, drawing resources between reentry in the community, from government, private, nonprofit sector working together to help people succeed. So I strongly encourage you to pass this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the testimony we have for House Bill 1389. Members, any questions? Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. To Director Betts. Good morning.
Morning, Vice Chair.
It's such a pleasure seeing you here.
Nice to see you too.
In the instance we were to move forward with this bill, would the department be able to absorb some of the funds? We're looking at $300,000. That might change if this moves on to another committee. But in your testimony, you raised some significant concerns about the needed logistics for hosting a commission, travel, meetings, communications, those kinds of things. The commission has basically been autonomous and working on their own with no staff for now. And from what we understand, complying with the Sunshine Law, and they did a whole report without any staff. Would it be possible for the department to absorb this with a, and then could you maybe assist us with identifying a number for a future committee?
Sure. For in terms of administrative resources, like we noted in our testimony, any attached agency or commission requires resources, requires assistance, requires director's office specifically to assist, especially considering that it is under the purview of Sunshine Law. So drafting agendas, drafting minutes in a timely fashion, posting those on the website. So it is quite a bit of work, although it might not seem as such. And also reflecting on Director Patterson's testimony, he did also mention that it would be helpful to have some staff. I believe our Fatherhood Commission, which is administratively attached to us, has a $20,000 appropriation, and we were attempting to get a half-time staff member for them, just to be able to assist with some of those logistics, everyday logistics of coordinating and minute taking and reaching out to other agencies for collaboration, et cetera. We absolutely understand the importance of this commission. I think it's a critical commission to remain in existence. We also, I would note, assist with transitioning folks out of incarceration by assisting them by getting medical coverage, SNAP, TANF, anything that they might need in order to get on their feet. We've also incorporated in the last year civil legal service language into some of our contracts and RFPs to ensure that folks are cognizant that people transitioning out of incarceration have definite civil legal concerns and needs, and they need a lot of support in order to be successful in transition back into the community and potentially reunite with family members, et cetera. And so as we note in our testimony, it would require some resources. So the other question is whether we really have jurisdiction over the correctional facility. I'm reflecting also on Ms. Shirota's testimony that we have aligned missions of assisting people and getting folks on their feet. So I definitely understand that, but it would require resources.
Thank you so much, Director.
Thank you.
Members, further questions? House Bill 1389. Okay, I have a question. I'm going to call and Mark, Mr. Patterson, you still there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, good morning. I noticed there wasn't any testimony from your office about this bill. The preamble of this bill writes that there's been at least one conflict between you and the Attorney Generals, and that it could prevent further execution of your duties. I know you have so many things on your plate. Probably most pressing is trying to get some funds for your staff. What are your thoughts about being moved administratively to a different department?
You know, it's
or if you'd like to, you can plead the fifth.
I like to plead the fifth, there was a differences of opinions on the commission, and we were uncertain in how we can move forward on this because we don't know if you know, we can direct that kind of decision making at all. For the mere fact that, you know, as Director Betts has said, you know, we don't even have our own staff at this particular point in time. It's hard for us to think of what department would best suit us as a commission. Yeah.
Okay, I understand.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Further questions? If not, we'll recess for decision making.
Thank you.
This is the Committee on Corrections, Military, and Veterans. We're here for decision-making on our 10 a.m. agenda. Thank you, everyone, for participating in this unique year of the legislature. Okay. Thank you. First up, members will be voting on House Bill 835 relating to the National Guard Youth Challenge Academy. We're going to defect the date to July 1st, 3050. We're going to put the amount of money that's requested in the committee report as well. Questions, comments? Okay, Vice Chair, with amendments, House Bill 835.
Thank you, Chair. Voting on House Bill 835. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Bronco.
Aye.
Representative Kobayashi.
Aye.
Representative Kong.
Aye.
Representative Morikawa.
Aye.
Representative Tarnas.
Aye.
Representative McDermott is excused. Is excused. Chair, the measure is adopted.
Thank you, members. Next up, House Bill 1292 relating to the Hawaii National Guard retirement benefits. We're going to make a couple changes. First, we'll defect the date to July 1st, 3050. We are going to incorporate some language that's been suggested by the ERS from House Bill 790. It's the definition of what an employee is, as well as language from House Bill 395 in lines 9 through 13. And this just describes what credit for military service and active duty is. ERS has mentioned that they are not the appropriate agency to be giving these out. So we're asking the DHERD, the Department of Human Resources, to put together resources, recommendations on how to better include our active duty and retired National Guard members who provide necessary services. So we'll be taking this out of ERS and instead placing this on a DHERD for this study, as well as incorporating some of the suggestions that ERS suggested. Members, any questions?
Yes, question. So does that mean that this makes them eligible to participate in the deferred compensation?
Well,
or not?
It's a study. So my understanding is that this is just going to be led by DHERD and no big changes other than the study will be going forward.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, hold on. Oh, I see. The credits on House Bill 395 will read that when ordered to active duty in the state, military personnel shall receive service credit for the time in service while serving on active duty. The service credit shall count towards retirement if the individual is also a current state or county employee. I'll pass this over to you.
Oh, no, that's fine. That's good.
Okay, and this is House Bill 395, lines 9 through 13, where we are inserting.
Okay.
Further questions? Okay, Vice Chair, with amendments.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 1292.
Yes, with amendments.
With amendments. Noting the absence of Representative McDermott, are there any reservations? Any no votes? Hearing none, the bill is passed.
Thank you, members. Okay. Next up, we have House Bill 1352. We have a House draft in front of us from the introducer. We're going to put a defective date of July 1st, 3050, and we're going to write in the committee report that the issues that surround the renewal of these lands are still unresolved for the next committee's consideration. But nonetheless, we want to incorporate these changes from the direct area representative. Questions, comments? Yes, Vice Chair. I'm sorry, Representative Kobayashi.
So I'm not exactly sure who is going to do the study or the report. It looks like the report is to be done by Office of Planning. DLNR is supposed to extract some data. Department of Health and I guess the feds are supposed to, the federal EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, are supposed to do some things. I mean, it's a bit of a hodgepodge.
You're right. Yeah, DLNR will provide that inventory of state land. DOH and EPA will identify those contaminants. Let's charge the Office of Planning to actually author this report. They're going to be seeking input from the departments and agencies on proposed alternate uses. We'll charge the Office of Planning to actually author this and submit this 20 days prior to the convening of the 2022 legislature.
But all of this is dependent upon whether there is any real consideration or serious consideration for returning surplus lands.
Yes, true. We have a defective date on here, and we hope in the committee report we can kind of illuminate some of the barriers, the fact that some of these things must be taken into consideration before a full report can be given, at least for the next committee's consideration of this bill.
Okay.
Okay, further questions? Yes, Rep. Tarnas.
Just, thank you, Chair. I recognize you'd like to move something out, and I just wanted to state my concern that this is premature. I have reservations about the measure because of it's not clear who's supposed to do what, and there's no support for the agencies to do it. And I would take a different approach in my committee. So I just want to state my reservations.
Okay.
And with all due respect, I'll vote with reservations just to have that clear.
Understood. Yeah, please vote your conscience.
Thank you.
Further questions? Okay, comments, Rep. Bronco.
I'd just like to echo Representative Tanya's comments, and I'll be voting with reservations.
Okay. Rep. Kobayashi.
I would vote to put the horse before the cart.
I think that's an aye.
That's an aye.
Okay, Vice Chair, the vote on House Bill 1352.
All right. The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 1352 with amendments. Vice Chair votes aye with amendments. Just double checking here. Representative Bronco with reservations.
Aye with reservations, correct.
Representative Kobayashi.
WR.
Representative Kong.
Yeah, with reservations.
Representative Morikawa.
Aye.
And Representative Tarnas.
With reservations.
Thank you. Chair, the measure passes.
And then Rep. McDermott.
Rep McDermott excused.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, members. Next up, we have House Bill 398 relating to inmates. We're gonna take the comments. We posed some of the questions given by the Department of Public Safety to HMSO, and they suggested that we strike on page 6, lines 5 through 7. That does have some other things to do with the release, that jurisdictional release. We think that that might deal with some of the concerns that the Department of Safety has. We'll defect the date to July 1st, 3050. 398, and that's all I've got. Questions, comments? Okay, Vice Chair, with amendments.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 398 with amendments. Chair votes aye, Vice Chair votes aye. Noting the excused absence of Representative McDermott, are there any reservations? Any no votes? Hearing none, Chair, the measure passes.
Okay, thank you, members. House Bill 621. This is relating to the OCCC Center site, the OCCC site. We are going to ask, first of all, with the consideration of the Office of Planning's testimony, that this convening not begin until the year 2026. That means we'll remove the language from lines 17 through 20 on page 7, and instead insert that this will begin in 2026. We'll do January 1st, 2026. On page 5, instead of the governor or the governor's designee, we're also going to make the director of Office of Planning as the convener of the group to help facilitate similar work being done by the Hawaii Interagency Council for Transit-Oriented Development in the area. On page 9, lines 6 through 8, we're going to change the report submission to 20 days prior to the following two legislative sessions. So that would be legislative sessions of 2027 and 2028. And on page 9, line 13, we're just going to correct the address to read 2109 Kamehameha Highway, just to be extra clear that that is the property that we are talking of. We'll do technical and non-sensitive amendments. We'll add a blank appropriation for the Office of Planning to oversee this group. And we'll add an effective date to July 1st, 2030. Members, questions, comments? Yes, Vice Chair. Representative Kobayashi.
The other guy.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the naming of 20 people is a little bit excessive. And I would prefer some language about, could be including but not necessarily these people, and see more community people on this than what looks like, half the state bureaucracy.
Wise points. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Vice Chair, for the vote. With amendments, House Bill 621.
Thank you, Chair. The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 621 with amendments. Noting the excused absence of Representative McDermott, are there any reservations? Are there any no votes?
Reservations? Tarnas, reservations?
Representative Tarnas votes aye with reservations.
There's.
Oh, apologies, I didn't look up.
Reservations.
Rep Bronco with reservations.
Thank you. Representative Marcella.
Yeah.
Aye. Chair, the measure passes.
Okay, thank you. Next up, members, House Bill 1080. This is the phase out of private correctional facilities. We're going to strike part 2. Instead, we're going to add a section into HRS 353L-3, which we're going to ask the Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission. We're going to ask that commission to create a plan to present to the legislature to phase out private correctional institutions as defined by this bill by 2025. The commission should seek input from the AG, the prosecutors, public defender, state judiciary, and the Department of Public Safety to create this comprehensive plan and necessary legislation for consideration. The report will be due 20 days prior to the convening of the 2022 legislature. We're going to completely strike part 3 since that lives largely in the following bill. And in section 5, we're going to amend the language to require the approval of the project to meet the following. It's going to require the Department of Public Safety to include input from the commission, and that we're going to ask that input and the recommendation of the commission be included in the EIS. In section 6, we're going to update point 3 to mirror the necessary input into the planning process of new or expanded correctional facilities, reflecting what I just mentioned. We will defect the date to July 1st, 3050, and make technical and non-substantive amendments. Members, questions? House Bill 1080. Rep. Kobayashi.
And improvement. Good work.
Members, further compliments.
No.
House Bill 1080, Vice Chair with amendments.
Members, the recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 1080.
With amendments.
With amendments, chair votes aye, vice chair votes aye. Noting the excused absence of Representative McDermott, are there any reservations? Are there any no votes? Hearing none, Chair, the measure passes.
Thank you very much. Members, House Bill 1082. We are going to, this is the more correctional facilities, the moratorium bill. As the PSD director mentioned, there has been in effect a 35-year moratorium on the construction of new facilities. And we've been told by our attorneys that a moratorium actually needs an end date rather than just to further until forever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to amend this bill to say that there'll be a moratorium from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. For the next year, there will be a moratorium. We're going to also amend the language requiring that DPS, Department of Public Safety, include input and recommendation from the Oversight Commission for any master plan, and that they also include the recommendations. The recommendations and input from the commission will be included in the environmental impact study for the construction of a new facility. We'll defect the date to July 1st, 3050, and make technical non-substantive amendments. Questions, comments? Okay, Vice Chair. 1082 with amendments.
Members of the committee, the recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 1082 with amendments, noting the absence of Representative McDermott. Are there any reservations? Are there any no votes? Chair, hearing none, the measure passes.
Thank you. House Bill 1110 relating to the Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission. My recommendation is to pass with amendments. We'll blank out the appropriation, but we'll include the amount in the committee report and defect the date to July 1st, 3050. Questions, comments? Okay, Vice Chair.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 1110 with amendments, noting the absence of Representative McDermott. Are there any reservations? Are there any no votes? Chair, hearing none, the measure passes.
Okay, thank you, members. And the final bill, House Bill 1389. We're going to pass this bill as is for future consideration of the next committee. Questions, comments? Rep Kobayashi.
Scratching my head.
Okay. As is.
Members, the recommendation of the chair is to pass House Bill 1389 as is. Noting the excused absence of Representative McDermott, are there any reservations? Reservations for Representative Fernndez. Any no votes? Hearing no votes, the chair, the measure passes.
Thank you, members. We're adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.